Hi everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. I'm going to be playing some more Standard. This is a relatively straightforward deck, which actually does not have that many new Duskmourn cards in it, but there's a couple of reasons I think it's worth trying that I'm going to get into as we go through the cards. First, the one new card in my main deck is Screaming Nemesis. So this is a 3/3 haste for 3, and then it has this triggered ability, which you need to read very carefully because it's kind of tricky. So when it's dealt damage, it can deal that much damage to any other target. So that's important. It has to be another target. So if you attack this into like a Preacher of the Schism, the Preacher of the Schism will do 2 death touch damage to it. So this is going to be dying, and you're going to deal 3 damage to the Preacher of the Schism. You can't use this trigger to finish off the Preacher of the Schism. You've got 2 damage that you could use to, on a different creature, or you could, just send it at your opponent's face. So that's one important thing to understand about it. And then it has the second clause: if a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. So that's pretty nice. This is a mono red deck. It does not want to see life gain, but you have to have this trigger go at your opponent's face, which is harder to do than you might think. I mean, one thing you can do is you can just shock your own Screaming Nemesis, and then the shock redirects, the 2 damage gets redirected through the Screaming Nemesis to your opponent. So you can then get this, they can't gain life, with essentially an emblem. It's going to be represented on Arena like a permanent effect. The other thing that's important to understand about this is if you attack it into a lifelink creature, like say you Alpha Strike into an Atraxa, this is a triggered ability. So they're still going to gain the life from the Atraxa. And then after that happens, you will deal them 7 damage because they're going to be dealing 7 to the Screaming Nemesis. They'll take 7, then they won't be able to gain life for the rest of the turn after that. So it's not that good at just attacking into lifelinkers because they gain the life before the trigger resolves. But it depending on how the life totals work out, that could still be a play that you actually want to do, because it means that, even though the Atraxa is going to live there and it's going to get to attack you, it's not going to be able to gain life when it attacks you on your opponent's next turn. So maybe that's a good play for that reason. I still only have 2 copies of this. Like, you can really have 2. You don't want to have a ton of 3-mana 3/3 hastes for 3 in your deck. So looking at the rest of the deck, it's kind of cool. Standard is so large that there's actually just like a ton of perfectly reasonable options to play in this deck. But one thing that appealed to me was just being able to play a ton of perfectly reasonable 1-mana cards. So I've got Hired Claw and Monstrous Swiftspear as my 2 1-drop creatures. I have Shock in my deck over Torch the Tower because this is a deck where you're going to be looking to finish your opponent off by just sending burn at their face at the end of the game. For Monstrous Rage is just a very good pump spell if you're an aggressive prowess deck, which this is to an extent. And then for Might of the Meeks, which again, this is an aggressive prowess deck. I don't have that many mice in my deck. I only have the Emberheart Challengers. I think it's still worth it, just even with with the Swiftspear, 1-mana, draw a card, trigger prowess, give your thing trample. This maybe could be something else. I've been reasonably happy with my Meek, and remember, you can just cycle it off your opponent's creatures. 1 Feldon. I think this is the next best 2-drop after the Emberheart Challenger. There's another one, a Fugitive something that's like a 2/1 prowess that has morph that I considered, and I considered just playing different 3-drops, but I ultimately decided just to play 1 Feldon. 4 Lightning Strikes. Again, this is a deck that wants to be able to go to your opponent's face, so there's Lightning Strike here as opposed to like a Braid or Obliterating Bolt or Scorching Shot. 2 copies of Case of the Crimson Pulse. I think this is just a generally good card. Not something you want a ton of, but in small numbers, I think it's pretty powerful in a deck like this. Like this deck, because it's got a decent amount of burn that can go to your opponent's face, and because it does have both the Screeching Nemesis and the Sunspine Lynx, which we're about to get to in a second, as ways to shut off lifelink, you can actually win a longer game. Like if you just deal, if you get your opponent down to 6 or you know, a lowish life total, just drawing cards, you do actually have a decent amount of reach, has been my experience. Final card, the Sunspine Lynx. This is another card that I think made this deck worth trying after Duskmourn came out. So this is not a new card, but Duskmourn features the Verge land cycle. Almost nobody on the ladder right now is playing monocolored decks. There's lots of 3-color decks, domain decks, especially like the curve where you curve up the beanstalk into the Oven Lord. You're going to put, I think that thing's a non-basic land. But basically this thing, against a lot of decks, you're going to be able to trigger this to deal a fair amount of damage to your opponent, and then they can't gain life. So when I say that this card is worth trying after Duskmourn, it's because I think that there's just a ton of 3-color decks right now. And even if you're a 2-color deck, where you have access to the Verge cycle, in addition to the fast lands and the surveil lands or the pain lands or creature lands, like you can build a 2-color deck and have like 26 or 27 lands in your deck and maybe only have 3 basic lands. Which I built decks that are like that, which is people played this Lynx against me and I was impressed by it. All right, so the lands, we got a lot of basic mountains. The Sunspine Lynx does count, it does deal damage to yourself based on your non-basics, so you don't want to have like all non-basics. I've got 2 Mistress Foundries, 3 Rockface Villages. The Rockface Villages only get to target the Emberheart Challengers and the Hired Claws. I think that's enough to make them worthwhile. Similarly, I don't think that this is a deck that really wants 4 Mistress Foundries. You don't want to have like opening hands where you have 3 lands, but 2 of them are colorless. And you really cut down on that if you cut back on your number of colorless lands. Like the odds of that happening get a lot lower. Sort of the same thing with the Rockface Village. This is, I think it's a little bit more acceptable to draw 2 of these in your opening hand, but you certainly don't want to have like an opening hand that's like 2 Rockface Villages and a Mistress Foundry, or 3 Rockface Villages, because you're not going to be able to cast a lot of the cards in your deck if you get that. That's why I only have 3 of those. All right, on to the sideboard and the next Duskmourn card, Pyroclasm. So this is not a new card, it's a reprint, but it hasn't been printed in more than 10 years, I think. It's been a very long time since it was printed. I think that this, having access to Pyroclasm, is interesting for this deck because in the past, if you were just a straight out aggressive creature deck and you played against that Convoke deck with Knight Captain of Eos, it was really hard to beat their good draws, especially when you were on the draw, because you would just be so far behind and just playing like, shock. You were never going to catch back up. Pyroclasm is a card that can catch you back up. And interestingly, in this deck, Pyroclasm actually isn't that painful on your creatures. Like Monastery Swiftspear and Emberheart Challenger both live through it. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to sideboard against the Convoke deck when I get to play against it, but I could see myself taking out some Hired Claws and probably Feldon. Feldon's definitely going to come out. But like, even if you were Pyroclasm and you had Hired Claw or Feldon, the Hired Claw, you can get it to be a 2/3 so that it would live. I mean, that takes a little bit of setup. And the Feldon, if you Pyroclasm with Feldon in play, you do get a trigger. So the Pyroclasm, it's weird just being like a mono-red low-to-the-ground deck. Pyroclasm both isn't good against you and is like fairly reasonable to have in your deck if it's good against your opponent. 2 copies of the Torch of the Tower. This is just generally like a good card. You're going to want to board it in against small creature decks, obviously. And like there are some small creature decks where you would want Torch of the Tower and you wouldn't want Pyroclasm. People have started playing kind of Aura's Boggles style decks where I think you would want Torch of the Tower, but you're not going to want Pyroclasm probably. Although they do have, there's a creature that's it's a white-blue creature that's a 2/2 that makes 1/1s when you play enchantments. So maybe you do actually want Pyroclasm against them. 2 Nahiri's Warcraftings. These are going to be against the problematic black creatures, Preacher of the Schism and Sheoldred, and skipping ahead. I also have 2 Koths in my deck, which are mostly for similar circumstances. When you want Koth is really good if the -3 is going to be to kill a good creature from your opponent when you do it. Which obviously you need 5 mountains in play to kill Sheoldred. On the play, you can do that. I mean, also if it doesn't have to be on turn 4 that it works, you can you also use Koth to kill Sheoldred like that. And I think Koth is just a very good payoff for being mono red. I could almost see playing it in the main deck, although I really want to try Sunspine Lynx more. Only 3 Urabrask's Forges. This card is a really good card in some matchups. I think that the really controlling decks are mostly domain decks that have access to Leyline Binding, and they're probably going to have a few other cards in their sideboard anticipating Urabrask's Forge. So I don't have a ton of those. It might be that you really just have to have 4. So far, I haven't found that I really wanted 4 in any matchup. It's more a nice to have, not a necessity. 1 Squee, which is kind of for similar spots to the Urabrask's Forge. I think this is a little bit more reasonable to have in your deck if your opponent has some amount of creatures. Like having Urabrask's Forge in your deck on the draw when your opponent is casting creatures is pretty awful. Squee is a little bit more reasonable in that case. And then another new card, Ghost Vacuum. So this is a graveyard hate card that you get value later on in the game. I have not played with this card yet. There were other options that you could already be playing, like Soul Guide Lantern, I'm pretty sure is in Standard right now. I wanted to try this because I think it might be better than Soul Guide Lantern. One thing that's a little bit annoying is you don't really have access in red to an anti-graveyard card that's good against Insidious Roots, as far as I know. The vacuum is not going to do anything against that deck. And similarly, if you play against that Storm Splitter combo deck, the Storm Splitter combo deck also likes to, it plays a lot of cards like Cash Grab that sends things to the graveyard, and then they put one of them into their hand. You don't have a window where you can Ghost Vacuum the card that they're going to be getting back. So it's not good in that matchup either. This is mostly just against reanimation decks, which the big Atraxa Reanimator deck, or big in the sense that it reanimates big things. Like Atraxa is one style of deck. There's also a white-blue deck that sometimes plays Helping Hand to get creatures out of the graveyard. It plays the new, it's like a blue and 6, and you get a 6/6 that keeps manifesting. I think Ghost Vacuum would be good against those decks. All right, let's play some games so we can see this sideboarding in action. I'm missing a component. That being things to trigger prowess. We already have a chance to do a point. This might be a domain deck. I'm getting definite domain deck vibes. I think I'm going to play around Temporary Lockdown. If I play around it, I mean, I could have obviously just played the Swiftspear and the Emberheart Challenger. Doing this, my hand is going to deal damage slightly slower, but I think that I'm still going to be dealing plenty of damage to win the game if they don't have Temporary Lockdown. And if they do have Temporary Lockdown, this is much better, because I have a much stronger follow-up to Temporary Lockdown than just play Hired Claw, do nothing. So I'm beginning to sense they don't have Temporary Lockdown. I'm going to hold the Swiftspear back and just activate the Hired Claw because it's the same amount of damage. And I have a Swiftspear left over. I hope they do something where they just put 5 non-basic lands into play on their turn. Some sort of infinite mana combo, and then all they do is search for non-basic lands and put them into play. So I beat a Leyline Binding now because I'm going to attack with everything. I'm going to Might of the Meek a Challenger. And if they Leyline Binding the Challenger, I still deal 7 damage. And playing this way, I beat No More Lies. Like if I just played the Lynx and they'd had No More Lies, they would have gotten to untap. Alright, so this is obviously some sort of domain deck against the domain decks. I think I don't want shocks. I think I do want... maybe stuff, maybe like this. I like having the one Koth because the ultimate is really threatening, and it also, in addition to just giving me like a way to threaten the ultimate, it does give me a removal for a big creature. Like if they wind up having one of the Archangel of Wrath, I think is the name of it, the lifelink 3/4 angel. But in a really long game, this is going to be able to kill an Atraxa. This is the dreaded double Mishra's Foundry hand that I said I didn't want to see. But I think it's... this hand is good enough to keep. I would be happier with my hand if this was a mountain, obviously. And this is all... like, this is not nearly as good as a mountain because I kind of would like to cast both of these. I think I'm just going to start out by Might of the Meeking. I don't think that there's much my opponent can have that would make me sad. And had I hit an actual mountain, I would have definitely played Monstrous Rage that turn. Especially now that I do the Case of the Crimson Pulse. I do just want to jam my spells to an extent. Is this a non-basic land? Yeah, I think that counts as a non-basic land. A little bit worried I'm about to get Sunfalled. I don't really have great options to avoid it. Like I could have gone Emberheart Challenger and Might of the Meek it or Monstrous Rage it. I think that I'd rather have that as my follow-up to Sunfall. I'm gonna play this mountain. I think I don't care that much. I'm going to wind up targeting the Emberheart Challenger this combat with Might of the Meek. Almost definitely. And I think I don't care that much about being able to make the land drop off the Emberheart Challenger. Is this lethal? 4, 5, 6, 8, and this is going to add 5, so it is lethal. This hand I'm going to mulligan. 5 lands and no creature is not a very good way to start with this deck. This hand is much better. I think I'm going to bottom a Lightning Strike. So this is going to be the combo deck, and they mulliganed once. When you have to decide between playing Hardclaw and Monastery Swiftspear, it is a real decision. Like, if I didn't already have the Feldon that I knew I was going to spend my mana on next turn, I probably would have played Hardclaw and planned on just attacking and pumping it. Oh, this is not the combo deck. I don't know what this deck is. This has to be some sort of a domain deck, right? Wait, they went and got another island, so maybe not. I like that they haven't shown any white mana yet, because it means that you don't have to be afraid of temporary lockdown and Sunfall. Or even, like, they're not even building up to a Leyline Binding, the way their deck is built. So I'm not really sure what their plan is. One card I did consider is there's a new 2-drop. It's red. I think this is lethal, but it's a lot. There's a new 2-drop, red for a 2/2 that has first strike on your turn. And I think it's whenever your opponent draws a card, they lose one life or deals 1 damage. Oh, I didn't even realize that was lethal. I just wanted to deal a lot of damage. I don't really know what my opponent's deck is. Anyway, back to that card that I chose not to play. The one spot where I thought it would actually be good was against Up the Beanstalk. But I think Feldon is probably just better. They do seem to have come prepared to not take a ton of damage against the Lynx. Sequencing your lands with this deck is a little bit tricky. Like, I chose to hide that I have a Rockface Village, or, you know, not show it to my opponent in that spot. I think next turn I might just want to play Hardclaw and then Rockface Village it. We'll see, though. Oh, they have Pyroclasm in their deck. Interesting. That makes me not want to do this Rockface Village play. The other thing you have to worry about is with the Sunspine Lynx dealing damage to you, which is not the greatest concern in the world, I would say. but it's a little bit of something. Wait, why didn't they do this in response to me targeting it with Might of the Meek? I'm not sure I understand that. The biggest thing that makes it sequencing hard is you need to consider the fact that you might hit a land you want to play off the Emberheart Challenger, but then you aren't going to have like your Mishra's Foundry in play to be able to attack with the next turn if you don't play it right away. Like here I might want to just play Mishra's Foundry, Sunspine Lynx, even though I'm going to take a point of damage, but that would give me the option of attacking with the Mishra's Foundry next turn. I think I might actually do that. So like this way I do have the option of playing Emberheart Challenger, activating the Mishra's Foundry, and alpha striking. That's probably worse than just playing the Emberheart Challenger and lightning striking my opponent, because I would have 3 prowess creatures in play. But I don't know, maybe some of my creatures are going to die. Somehow, probably not in the blue-green deck. So this is like a blue-green delve deck, basically. I don't understand. I guess I don't block. It's hard for me to imagine what they could possibly have in their deck that would make that a good attack, but I guess let's find out. Oh, I see. Wow. I wish I blocked. Do I need this point of damage? Hopefully not. I think I might be able to beat like 1 on summon if I leave this back. I still want to. I want to animate the Foundry and block with it if I'm given the option. It's not actually called on summon. It's Into the Flood of the Maw. Or Into the Flood Maw. Yeah. Alright. I wonder if I would have won that game if I had just blocked with the Sunspine Lynx. So they're a like 5/5 tribal deck. See, this is one of those matchups where I don't think Urabrask's Forge is good. So instead, I think I'm gonna do that. This is not my dream one-lander. Here I'm going to lead on Hired Claw because there's no way I'm... Well, I guess I might trigger Prowess with the Monstrous Rage next turn. Even I'm just going to play the Monastery Swiftspear either way, so no. But the Hired Claw attacks us with 2 power because it pings. So like I've done the same... Well, this creature has already done the same amount of damage that a turn 1 Swiftspear would have done. Grabbing some cash. Oh, this is the creature I didn't... No, it's not the creature I didn't know the name of. They have Storm Chaser's Talent in their deck. Wow. They have to have the new 6/6. I think it's called Abhorrent something. Abhorrent Manifesting Guy. I'm sure Up the Beanstalk is a good enough card for this deck. Like, how often are you going to draw 2 cards off of it in a game? The answer's got to be not that often. I guess it's another hit for their cash grab. That might be what they're thinking. Okay. Just Monstrous Rage this thing and just let that go. I don't think I killed them, but put them in range that it's gonna be really hard for them to live because of the lightning strikes. Like, they have to answer the Hired Claw now, and then I'll just lightning strike them. Maybe they're gonna answer it with a Pyroclasm. Okay. You've weakened my Monastery Swiftspear. I guess I probably put the roll token on the wrong thing. Although, oh, I could have. I guess if they have negates in their deck, I didn't want to lightning strike them. They do have 2 Yavimaya Coasts. Had I put the Wicked roll token on the Hired Claw, I would have been able to attack and ping them for 1. And then finish them with lightning strike if they had a way to prevent that in addition to Pyroclasming. I don't think it's going to matter because I'm just going to lightning strike and then untap and lightning strike them again. Unless they have some sort of instant that gains them like 6 life in response, they're not going to live. I go first. I like that. I like that a lot. What are these blue-green decks? This deck is going to... I forget the name of the card. It's like Squirming Emergence, Squeamish Emergence, something like that. The Ghost Vacuum is going to be good against their deck. Oh. I forgot you could do that with this card. Usually people just start on Chapter 2. But they did save a mana there. Into the Floodmaw is not a very good answer to the Lynx, has been my experience. So they're about to recast a Bitter Triumph. They have to spend mana for it. I'm just going to play this. If they don't have a counter, I get 2 damage out of it, and then they have to play the Bitter Triumph on their turn, because they're not going to want to let this thing just hit them. And as we can see, I do have a lot of burn in my hand. Squirming Emergence. What are they bringing back to me? They're playing a long game. So this deck is trying to cheat attracts into play. They also have this bear that they cheat into play. It's like a big vigilance bear that has something to do with returning lands. Well, let's see if they have a bitter triumph. I'm assuming they're going to spend mana to not take 5 from the Lynx. I'm perfectly fine if we just go, if I pass and they pass back. Because that would mean they would go to 6 and I'd be able to double lightning strike them. Here, now they can get Atraxa back, but I've got 10 points of burn, so I'm just going to end of turn lightning strike, untap lightning strike, shock, shock, and they need to have a counter or a way to gain life, which they probably don't have either of those in their main deck. I mean, they have a way to gain life in the Atraxa, but they need to get a combat in with it, which I do not think is going to happen. There's no point in responding to this trigger. Like, the first lightning strike isn't the spell that I need to worry about resolving, it's the last of the burn spells. Because if they don't all resolve, I'm almost definitely going to lose. I guess I could conceivably draw another Lynx, but I wouldn't even cast it. If I drew it next turn, I would try to just kill them. You can see what they're choosing from. Oh, this is the bear. Get that bear. I can't look at them anymore. Oh, they have Valgavoth. I didn't put this in my reanimation deck. In part because I didn't realize it existed when I built that deck. I had overlooked it in the spoiler. But I also have to say, I haven't tried it, but reading it, it seems like it's worse than the White Oven Lord. Because the White Oven Lord just plays so much better in the sideboarded games where you have to fight through reanimation hate. Alright, this is a matchup for the Ghost Vacuum. I think I'll just cut. I want to cut Shocks or probably Case of the Crimson Pulse. It's slow. The way their deck functions, they just can't have that much interaction in their deck, or they won't be able to do their like Squirming Emergence combo. So I don't think I really need to worry about making my deck grindier. I can just play like all of the stuff that kills them as fast as possible, and a little bit of interaction with the graveyard and the Ghost Vacuums. I'd like to hire a Claw. I hope I can just freely Might of the Meek this. I don't have to worry about their untapped mana, but we'll see. Turns out I do have to worry about their untapped mana. I still get the trigger, and this forces them into the Mott. They chose not to. I guess they denied me a card, or they didn't deny me a card, but they are saving 4 life, which maybe is what they wanted. Surely they're going to bounce it now, right? Yeah. And I'm just going to recast it. I guess they timed that right. There's no way that they care. Like, they definitely would rather have 4 life and me have a card than not have 4 life. It's going to be sweet when I had a Ghost Vacuum off of this Might of the Meek. I failed. I think I have to cast this, and I don't think it really matters what I target. I have to cast it in the sense that I need to be able to do a lethal alpha strike into the Atraxa that's about to be in play. Which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do. Like, I'm going to, assuming they have nothing, I guess I'm going to probably put them to 4. Oh, they have put Atraxa into play and bounce something. That's bad for me. And they didn't play another non-basic land. I think I'm going to lose now. Maybe not. Oh wait, they didn't even play into the Floodmaw. Don't they? Huh. Oh, they didn't have enough stuff for Squirming Emergence. This deck is really fragile on a lot of axes. They have another deadly cover-up. They could get the Sunspine Lynx out of my hand, but then they're just going to die to Mishra's Foundry. Kept a somewhat land-heavy hand. Trying to land as my first draw step was disappointing. Oh, this is a cool deck. It's just like Delirium beatdown. I don't know if it's a good deck, but it's cool. It's a hard-hitting question. Why is this card bad in my deck? That's still not going to give them Delirium. But if this is an enchantment creature, so when it dies, they're going to get Delirium. I guess they're also very likely to get Delirium. Look at that thing. Wait, what? I thought this was the fight card. It's not. Holy cow, that's a big stubborn Burrow Fiend. Can I live if I jump? Yeah, I guess. I can leave the Screaming Nemesis black to block. Sad. I wonder if Ghost Vacuum is worth it in this matchup. I'm going to try it. Lightning Strike seems not that exciting. Actually, I don't... Maybe Torch... The Exile on Torch the Tower is nice, but a lot of their stuff has 3 toughness. So maybe that's not the best. Probably... Torch is better than Shock. I don't want Pyroclasm. I want all my Lightning Strikes. And I think I want my Nahiri's Warcraftings. I guess I'm going to keep this rather than going to 5. This doesn't seem like a hand that's very likely to win. But I do have a Ghost Vacuum. Slurp. We're going to vacuum that right up. Don't worry, I'll take care of that one for you. Nothing for me to vacuum up. I think I should have attacked. I think I kind of don't really want to just block the wicker guy, but alright, I'm going to. I can go into full control here so that I can Ghost Vacuum the Rubble Belt dude in combat because this is sorcery speed. It doesn't matter in this case because they didn't have a creature in play. Are these things ever going to do anything? I feel like the answer is no. I'm just going to take a long time for them to do anything through the Ghost Vacuum. We need is another Ghost Vacuum to really start vacuuming stuff up. I'm going to kill one. Rather than just do 3 damage to their face. Guess I'm going to go after the artifact creatures. I could hit the land, but hitting the land only weakens the Patchwork Beetle. It doesn't also weaken the Stubborn Burrow Fiend. Sorcery speed to activate, it is. If I forget to play a land on my turn, I might have. Oh, this trigger happens. This size is when it happens, not when it resolves. You only have one creature in their yard right now. Hopefully I get a little bit lucky on the mills. And I can hold this vacuum for one more turn. Of course, now the Inti is going to make it so that they have trample, so I can't jump. The exception of the Hearth Elemental, this seems like a pretty well-built deck. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose. I think I get some haste, guys. We'll get out of this. I should have done this last turn. I would have been killing them had I done it. No, I just died to the Inti. Well, that went pretty well. Even the one match I lost against that Delirium aggro deck, I think I drew not great. I mean, my opponent also didn't draw very good in the second game. And I think I also just kind of punted that game by not using the Ghost Vacuum to make the creatures one turn sooner. Outside of that, the deck just performed really well, I think. I'm pretty impressed with this deck. The Might of the Meeks are a little bit awkward. There might be a better card to play in place of that. We didn't really get to see Case of the Crimson Pulse do anything, although I didn't have to play any games where my opponents really interacted with me a lot. I played mostly against decks that were also, pretty linear, trying to just do their own thing quick, which is not the matchups where you care about Case of the Crimson Pulse at all, which is why I boarded it out a decent amount. Other than that, the Sunspine Lynx did seem pretty strong. Then against that Delirium deck, they weren't that good, but it was still like a 5-power creature that dealt 2 or 3 damage the turn it came into play, which is very strong. And we did get to see the players can't gain life come up against the Virtue of Persistence, although they would have lost even had they gained that life, which is nice. Nothing really interesting happened with the lands in the games that I played. I guess there was one game where Mishra's Foundry almost saved me from dying, but then it just got bounced, so it didn't even do anything. I think the way the game's played out, my lands could have all been mountains, and it would have been the same result, or maybe even a little bit better. But I do think that having some of these value lands in your deck, if you play enough games, it is going to matter. Didn't get to see Pyroclasm get boarded in at all. I did play against some people who boarded in Pyroclasm against me, and they did actually one time kill one of my creatures. But I think that Pyroclasm is not very good against my deck, and I do think it would be good against decks that are trying to play Gleeful Demolition. Other than that, the sideboard cards, I guess the Squee Urabrask Forges were the one places where I don't know that they really shined at all in any of the games I played. Ghost Vacuum was really good against that Delirium deck. I think if I hadn't just drawn a billion lands, it would have easily won me the game. I could see wanting another one of those, because it was also really good against the Squirming Emergence deck. Although those are perhaps not like the matchups you really want to be super prepared for. I will say that I've been playing a lot of Standard and I've been enjoying it because I play against a different deck almost every single match. It's kind of unbelievable that like the variety of the decks, and it's not even like there's 6 different decks, but there's a big overlap in the cards they're playing. Like very frequently I'm playing against people who have entirely different cards in their deck than stuff anybody else is playing. And like if you look at the cards I'm playing like some of this stuff, like the Emberheart Challenger, the prowess stuff. There is a couple of different versions of prowess, and they all play Might of the Meek and the prowess creatures and Monstrous Rage. But the rest of my deck is filled out with some stuff that I've never seen anybody else cast this card. I've seen one other person play this card. I've never seen anybody cast this card in the Standard. I haven't seen anybody play Feldon. Obviously, Feldon, like in previous incarnations of Standard, saw a lot of play. Shock and Lightning Strike, some people do play. And then Koths, nobody else is really playing Koth. Urabrask Forge is a pretty heavily played card. So, yeah, there's definitely pretty big differences across the different decks in Standard, and there does seem to be a lot of different decks. So this is actually the first time in, I don't know, like 5 years when I really felt like Standard was really good, which is surprising to me. I was not expecting a big Standard like this to feel as open as this does, but so far it's been real good. Hope you're enjoying these videos, and if you are, sub to the channel. I've still got, I think, 2 more ideas I want to try in this Standard, and in the course of doing that, I might come up with additional ideas for videos. So sub if you want to make sure you see those. Thanks for watching.